McGallagher to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Hello and welcome to not just another, but episode 46 of the Saints FC podcast. We have been doing this for a long time, haven't we, Tom? How are you today?
I'm amazed we've been doing this so long, but I'm good, John. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. I've not let Saints performances or clutching draws from the jaws of victory get me down. Yeah. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you've accidentally stumbled upon this, you're listening to the Saints FC podcast. We're delighted to have you listening to us. If you would like to get in contact with the podcast, the best way to do that is either through Twitter at Saints FC Podcast, or you can email us saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com. Since the last time we put one of these out, we've had a 2-2 draw at home with Brighton, a 3-0 loss at the hands of Liverpool. There's been all sorts of talk and conjecture about how Saints are doing, what our prospects for the season are. Tom, I'm just going to start with the draw with Brighton. What's your take on that?
It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? It was kind of horribly inevitable. I think the frustrating thing is Saints played so well, didn't they? That first half, it was proper Koeman style, or even Pochettino style, flying out the blocks, players everywhere across the pitch. Lamina, brilliant. Even when he did his typical Lamina thing and lost the ball, he'd win it back. Hojbjerg snapping into everything. Redmond looked brilliant. The first 45 minutes were phenomenal, but we're only 1-0 up. And then, what's interesting is we kind of panic when Brighton just changed their formation just ever so slightly and put the emphasis more on attack, and we just kind of completely lose our way. And then obviously we go 2-0 up, and it all goes wrong from there, John.
I know. What's the best way to deal with this? Do we start off with Well, I don't know. Should we get the negatives out of the way, and then let's go through the match in reverse, and then we can finish on Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg's wonder goal, which would be maybe a more fun way to talk about it. In which case, should we start with the Brighton penalty in the last minute of injury time, of stoppage time? We have James Ward-Prowse in the box, big, strong James Ward-Prowse, clumsy, the kind of guy that would give away a penalty. I mean, what happened there? I went with my brother and his girlfriend, so we went in the chapel end rather than the northern. We wanted to keep things relatively civil. So I didn't have the best view of the incident, but watching at home, you probably saw a couple of replays. I had a few people messaging me saying they didn't think it was a penalty, or that it was quite a weak penalty. From where I was standing, it just looked like James Ward-Prowse bundled into the guy, and the guy fell over, and the penalty was given.
I mean, it probably was definitely one of the softer penalties you're going to see. There wasn't much in it. But again, it comes down to something that we spoke about this loads last season. It's about intelligence, isn't it? Football intelligence, if there is such a thing. And what Saints do, and what Saints did at that moment, what James Ward-Prowse did at that moment, is he gave the referee a decision to make, and the referee took it. And it was a bizarre thing for James Ward-Prowse to do. I question why James is on the pitch. I know Romeu wasn't on the bench, but we were at Palace away, and when we were needing to shore up that win, Romeu came on and he was brilliant. He did exactly that, and I think he is definitely more defensively able. There's no doubt about that than JWP. So, but why give the referee a decision to make? And again, I wonder if, and this is a silly thing to say because they've got to be better than this, but like we need to do almost everything in the last seconds of the game not to be kicking down that end. You know, like it's the same. Like, I wonder if there's something about the away fans getting raucous. You know, happening against Leicester, it's happening against Brighton, and like the Saints need to almost like they want to be facing into the away fans in the second. I don't know. It can't be that. It can't be that simple. But why did he give him the decision to make? And also, what's James Ward-Prowse doing near Duffy, who's a man mountain?
It is weird that James Ward-Prowse is marking Duffy in the first instance. He probably wasn't marking, it was probably zonal marking, and that was just in his zone. All right, we'll get on to zonal marking later, I think, Tom, because there's got to be a whole talk about our defensive tactics and what's kind of causing this. But yeah, interesting. If we kind of like then rewind game in reverse chronological order of this game, the substitutions were bizarre, weren't they? I mean, James Ward-Prowse and Stephen Davis coming on to shore up a game, it just makes no sense. But then one of the complaints I've heard is, well, we had Brighton on the ropes, why don't we just go in for the kill? And one of the wonderful things about when we did have Ronald Koeman as manager, he was never really about shoring up games, was he? He was always, as soon as you had someone in the ropes, you go in for the kill. And that was the kind of way how we saw out lots of games. We didn't allow teams to get back into it. Whereas now, when we get the lead, it's almost like so important. We're desperate to hold on to it, and therefore the desperation means that we're less likely to hold on to it. But yeah, the substitutions are bizarre. I couldn't figure them out at the time. I still haven't figured them out since.
I mean, I love Stephen Davis. My falling out of love with James Ward-Prowse a little bit, and I hate to criticise Saints players, but I just don't think Saints is I think for his career, maybe he needs to find something else. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I can't even remember who really was on the bench. But I don't know where Romeo was on the bench. It just seemed to me bizarre substitutions because Stephen Davis is fantastic technical player, but he's not a defensive-minded player. James Ward-Prowse is definitely not a defensive-minded player. So I don't quite know what the game plan was. And it just invited Brighton onto us. And Saints, and I think we're going to come on to talk about this, like psychologically, there is a problem at Southampton Football Club when they are winning games. I think it's 14 points from 14 games. I think Mark Hughes has dropped as Saints manager from winning positions. If we could maintain leads in even 2/3 of the games we were winning, all this talk about Saints being in trouble would evaporate. We just can't psychologically hold on to points. And it is, again, just an absolute baffling thing. These are professional footballers playing in the highest standard league on the planet, and why can they not be coached to win a game? It's a real issue, and it baffles me.
I mean, it is totally baffling, but then it's the same stuff which happens over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And is it defensive frailty? Is it that we don't have power and strength and height in the box? Well, no, because now we've got Vestergaard in there, we've got Wesley Hoot in there.
By average height, we've got probably easily the biggest centre-back pairing in the Premier League.
Yeah, and so it's not that. It's not the strength. It's not the height. Maybe it's the awareness. Maybe the tactics are wrong. Maybe there's something about the players not understanding zonal marking, although that I cannot believe. I mean, these players must have been playing zonal marking since they were 10 years old. It's not a new thing. Yet players like Shane Duffy and Glenn Murray, big centre forwards, we just can't deal with them. And that Shane Duffy's goal from the Brighton free kick, which was just inside our half, looped into the box. And I mean, is McCarthy a little bit to blame for this? Is it the defence? I mean, should we be looking for someone to blame? Because when you look at the goal, it's a really odd goal to give away. It seems very rudimentary. Are we pointing the finger of blame at someone?
Well, the finger of blame has to go at someone, right? It's someone's job. Someone's highly paid job is to prevent that happening, whether that's Vestergaard, as the sort of as the sort of alpha male centre back, whether it's McCarthy as the goalkeeper who's setting his defence up in front of him, whether it's Bertrand as the captain, whether it's Mark Hughes as the manager, whether it's the coaches, someone is to blame for it. This isn't a ricocheted shot. This is not Harry Maguire's goal. This is like 101 football, as I imagine if you're a Premier League footballer. And what I don't understand is we play a really high line, which is an interesting thing to do against a team of A, we don't have a giant goalkeeper, and B, we know that Brighton are a very physical, very big team that like crossing the ball in the box. So we play a high line, we invite a good cross into the box, and we basically say, come on then, we're going to stop you scoring a goal. And we can't, we don't do that from crosses. We don't stop teams scoring goals. So I don't understand that either. At that ball seems to me that McCarthy has to come and get it. He has to claim that. And, Fraser Forster had his critics, but he often, when he came for those balls and he smashed through people, he would get them. And I don't understand it. I don't understand. They just paralysed again.
Yeah, and I wonder as well if it's the thing about losing concentration. It happened, 2 minutes after we'd gone 2-0 in the lead with Danny Ings' penalty. And it happens so frequently that when you score a goal, you immediately concede one because players have lost their focus or something, or you've suddenly gone back to the halfway line. The momentum of the game has suddenly changed. But I think, the 2 goals that we conceded both seem to have more about what's going on in the players' heads and minds than anything to do with their ability or tactics. Or maybe the tactics were at fault for the first Brighton goal, for Shane Duffy's one, but I mean, what?
It's up here, isn't it? It's got to be up here. It's like it can't be anywhere else. Like, they're not bad footballers. Like, look, we've got a Dutch international centre back, we've got a Danish international centre back, we've got a keeper who's in the English squad, we've got an England international left back, and we've got a European Championship winning right back. Like, it's got to be in their heads. And you're running out of excuses, aren't you, now, for this group of players? Like, it does drive me mad, and you wonder, like, what have they got to do? And the problem is, like, the team they put out, that's their best. That's the best 11, I think. So what are they going to do?
I mean, this is almost where you need, like, just to get someone like, I don't know, a Tony Pulis in just for a couple of weeks, just to drill them over and over and over and over again. Facing up to 100 set pieces at the end of training until they've cleared every single one of them. I mean, it's strange. I mean, I don't anticipate it could be that basic, because that seems so bleedingly obvious that, okay, we're not very good at defending set pieces, we're not very good at defending crosses, therefore just drill it until every player knows exactly what they're doing, exactly what zone they should be marking, knowing exactly when to react to the ball. I mean, I thought Matip's goal against Liverpool, Vestergaard looked like he reacted to it about half a second too late. If you watch on the highlights, obviously you wouldn't be able to see this in the stadium when it happens, but you can kind of see, like, the moment when his mind switches on and he suddenly realises he needs to be marking that player. And it's too late by then. Matip's got the space and he heads it in.
I'd just say on that point, I mean, Matip's a centre-back. Like, football, like, most basic thing in football is, like, they're going to, like, and Saints do it, you're going to hit the centre-backs at set pieces because they're the biggest men on the pitch generally. They're the biggest men on the pitch, they're the strongest, and they're often very good with their head. So why are we switching off? Shane Duffy is a centre-back. Like, how are we switching off on centre-backs at set pieces? You know that's where the ball's going to go. And I think there's a broader thing about the Brighton game. This isn't Man City. This isn't Spurs. This is a team that, as I heard on the night, they have come back from 2-0 down in the Premier League away from home, like 3 times. Once was the week before against Fulham. Like, this is a team that when they are 2-0 down away from home, they are dead. They are as finished as anyone's ever going to be. And we psychologically lost that battle against that team that never do anything at 2-0 down.
And I think kind of probably the reason for that is how quickly they got their goal back once they were 2-0 down, because there was never any time for them to ease into the fact of, oh no, we've lost this game, because we let them straight back into it. Which means now, on our reverse, it's all going to get better from now, Tom. We had the Danny Ings penalty. Now, it's quite interesting because I was in the chapel end, as I mentioned earlier. Danny Ings won the penalty. The foul was on him. Now, quite often, like statistically, a striker is much higher chance of missing a penalty if they're the person to win the penalty. Exactly like that. Exactly like Charlie Austin against Palace. So quite often it's better to have another player that wasn't involved in the incident to take the penalty. So when Danny Ings stepped up, I was feeling pretty nervous, knowing what our result, what normally happens with Saints players when they take penalties these days. And I was delighted when he put it away. I mean, and great, that's another goal for Danny Ings. His scoring record is looking really, really fantastic. And I know penalties not necessarily something to get really excited about, but he won the penalty, he was there, he put it away. Saints player putting away a penalty, that's a great thing to see, isn't it?
And also, he wasn't having it's his best game, probably at that point. So to dust himself down and exactly like you say, take the responsibility. You know, he hadn't scored at home for Saints, and he'd said about he wanted to score his goal at St Mary's. You know, there's a lot of responsibility there, and also like he knows that it's 1-0. You know, this is a really important penalty to score. So yeah, hats off to him. It was a really good penalty, and I think before, you know, if you look at the run up to penalty, really well played by Cedric to kind of ghost in between a couple of players and put the ball into a dangerous area.
Yeah, and it actually was a little bit against the run of play at that point. I thought we'd done really well in the first half. Second half, Brighton were definitely back into the game, and so to go 2-0 up felt really amazing. So let's go back a little bit further in time, and at the end of that first half, I was absolutely delighted. We've been playing really well. Brighton, I think, had one half chance, so like practically nothing, and we had that absolute wonder strike for Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. There we go. Now we get to talk about Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg's strike. I feel very fortunate because I was at St Mary's in the chapel, which means I had the view from behind Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg putting it in. But I was sat in pretty much the same place when Cuco Martinez scored his goal against Arsenal, Tom, which almost exactly the same point in the pitch. Who's your favourite? Is it Cuco's goal? Is it Hojbjerg's goal? And I've got a view on this, but I want to hear your view first.
I think technically better is Cuco's goal, because from memory, like wasn't Cuco's like on a slight half volley? And also it might be just a trick of the angle, but Cuco's goal does seem to swing further out before it swings back. So like technically it's a better goal. But also with Cuco, you were always a bit like, who's this? He was a bit like Ali Dia. You always thought he was a bit of an imposter. Whereas Hojbjerg, we love him. So we wanted to see him score that goal. So for me, like my head says Cuco, but my heart says Pierre.
So, I mean, I'm going to choose Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg's goal on the technical ability for it. So, I mean, basically the same point, but slightly different view on it. So, Cuco's, the ball was coming out to him. It was bouncing. He struck it kind of off, you know, it was off the ground when he struck it. But it was kind of a wild smash at it. And yes, it did curve a lot and it looked absolutely sensational. And it obviously was what he was trying. But I think you could present Cuco with that ball 1,000 times and he would literally do it the once, and it just happened to be against Arsenal in that game on Boxing Day. Whereas Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, the ball comes out to it and he kind of like controls it and pushes it out in front of him and he strikes it and he hits it and it goes like an absolute rocket and then just curves a little bit at the end just to go inside the post. It was just, and I think if you gave Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg that shot 1,000 times, he'd probably score 100 of them. But yeah, I mean, Cuco's goal was just wild and just totally unbelievable. But actually, I think technically Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg's there was more technique in his. I think Cuco had a kind of lucky swipe, but it was wonderful to see it go in. And you know, I mean, that's why you go and watch Saints, basically, or you go and watch football is for these moments like that.
Yeah, it was a great goal, and also he seems like a great bloke, doesn't he? He seems like actually someone that Saints fans, you know, after probably a bit of a time of not being able to relate to footballers, I think Pierre-Emile seems like a bloke that most Saints fans would get along with. He seems to care. I also think quite tellingly when, you know, after the Brighton game, he's the one that the management team and the PR team wheel out, because I think that they know he has that ability maybe to connect with the fan base. It was a great goal. And also what was really good about the goal as well was the challenge from Lamina beforehand, because I think from memory Lamina kind of loses the ball and then like monster, like whoever tackles him, Lamina gets back up and monsters him, and then passes it. So it was like I really feel their midfield thing is a great thing for Saints right now, despite results maybe not going our way. So yeah, it was a really good goal.
It's a nice little bromance in the middle of the park between the guy with the worst dress sense and the guy with the worst tattoos. Yeah. It's funny actually, like my little boy, he's got some fake transfers on his arm at the moment. And I swear they could be the same sort of things that Pierre Hojbjerg has on his arms. But I mean, it was an absolutely splendid goal. And, you know, when you look at the match in reverse, if it had gone like that, if Brighton had gone 2-0 up and then we come back and then the goal to draw it was Pierre Hojbjerg's, we'd be looking back at that result going, oh, you know, okay, so we were down and a draw at home at Brighton is obviously not what you want. But, I mean, what a goal to see, you know, good performance. And actually, if you play the game in reverse, it's much better than if you play it forwards, which I know has all the frailties that we've talked about. But, I mean, for a Monday night game, the atmosphere was good. They had the kind of like fireworks display in the stadium beforehand. I missed it because I only ever show up about 30 seconds before kick-off, no matter whether I'm trying to do that or not. But there was a buzz. And actually, when you walked into the stands, there was that kind of like fireworks smoke, which kind of created that atmosphere like you'd gone to a European game where they had the kind of like firecrackers and flares and stuff. And it did help the atmosphere on a Monday night, which is quite a difficult game to get fans out to.
Yeah, it's funny. Saints getting a lot of stick at the moment. I've been partial to that a little bit. One of the things we're getting stick for is this fireworks thing, and I don't know if we're going to come to this later about whether the club have kind of lost sight of what's important. But if you look at it, Southampton is not. It's not. They've got to get people in that ground on a Monday night, haven't they? The game's on Sky, so anyone can watch it either illegally or just nipping out of the pub and having a pint. So they need to get 30,000 people out of the stadium, and a lot of people don't like it. That people don't like music when we score. Like, I hate that clapping thing. That people do when it's a corner, like dum, dum, dum. I hate that more than anything. But that's the modern world, isn't it? And we have to get on with it.
I quite like the clapping thing at the corners, yeah, but it's been going on for a long while. And also, so the
on clapping, if anyone can tell us, I think it's actually made the quality of free kicks and corners worse. So I don't know if there's anyone who can look into that at all, but that's my gut instinct.
I think this is a challenge for Duncan Alexander. Tom, can you tweet him now and find out about that? Like if the clapping and the build-up to free kicks. I think he's at Oily Sailor. We'll have to try and get him back onto the podcast. He gave quite a good insight. It's funny though as well, because the other thing that people have been banging on about is the kind of clackers, the cardboard like things that you slap and they make a lot of noise. In the northern end, they're totally pointless. But actually in the chapel end, which is pretty kind of notoriously quiet, it did help the atmosphere. Or at least I felt it helped the atmosphere in the chapel end, where we don't tend to be as noisy as we are in the northern end. I do think because we're talking about fireworks, stuff like this, we should go on to have Saints lost their way or lost sight of the important things, which, I mean, I don't know, Tom, for you, what are the important things? What are the things that Saints should be focusing on?
Winning above all. Like, it's ridiculous, it's obvious, isn't it? But it has to be about winning. And if it's not about winning, it has to be the other thing, which I think Southampton fans love more than not winning. Not love more than not winning, but it's the second best thing they love, which is bringing young players through. And on both counts, we ain't really seeing much of that right now.
But to be fair to the kind of social media team and stadium experience team or whatever they have, that's not their role. They have no control over that. That's Mark Hughes, who has to get the team winning and has to, kind of actually bleed young players through. Interestingly, after the Brighton game, they sent around this fan survey about atmosphere, and it was like this survey, it had loads and loads of questions in it. My response was, because I understand, obviously winning is going to get a better atmosphere, bringing young players through, that's also going to be exciting. But in terms of what are the periphery things that a club can do to improve the atmosphere, and for me, the answers which I put in repeatedly into the survey were lower ticket prices and safe standing. I actually think if you had a safe standing section, 4,000 to 5,000 standing places, that with 20 quid a ticket, you would vastly improve the atmosphere. St Mary's, I think, would have a more kind of fearsome effect, and it might actually have a positive effect on the team as well. I mean, what do you think about that? Am I just being ludicrous?
No, I don't think you are. I mean, I like to, when I go to St Mary's, I like to sit in the north by the away fans. It definitely, for me, it's the best atmosphere in the ground, and for obvious reasons, that's probably not where they would have the standing zone because it's close to the away fans. But I like what Palace have done. Like Palace have kind of, when you go to Palace, and it is a great day as an away fan, they've got those ultras, and they're a great atmosphere. They really lift. They really give the place a lift. So I agree with you. I think that Saints. We spoke about it many times before. Saints have disproportionately high ticket prices for the quality of the football and the results that they receive. I think it was something like the 5th or 6th highest season ticket price in the league. I mean, Saints need to do something to get the fans back on side if they're not winning games, but they can't just lower ticket prices all of a sudden. I don't know quite what it is, and they can't obviously introduce unilaterally standing. So I'm not. Just win some bloody games.
Well, the funny thing is with the ticket prices, I don't know if you saw that cost of football survey, or the BBC ran a report, and there's about 10 clubs in the Premier League that could make a profit if they played every single game in front of an empty stadium, because their ticket prices, their ticket sales don't have that much of an impact on their bottom line. And Saints were right at the top of that. Yeah. So, I mean, the club could afford, definitely, to reduce the ticket sales. If they reduced it to 20 quid a ticket, which is the same price that the away fans pay to come to St Mary's, which is maybe why they always have a good, a good following, a great day out. We give away leads to them and everything. But how hard would it be for Saints to do that? I have one theory as to why they wouldn't do it, and that is they're worried about if we went to the Championship and ticket sales did become important to the club, it's very difficult to put the prices up from 20 quid a ticket to over 30 quid a ticket, which the money that they now need playing in the Championship.
That's a very astute analysis, and maybe that is the mindset. But again, doesn't that kind of tell you something about Saints? That they genuinely fear relegation? And if you wonder, does that atmosphere, does that thought process kind of creep into other aspects of the football club? If they I can't imagine under Koeman or under Pochettino that they were thinking about that. That they were thinking about that obviously it was a possibility, but that's probably not what they were planning for. And I do wonder with Saints, whether now again, it goes down to a negative mentality. And are we seeing this sort of creeping tide of pessimism sweep through the club? And what impact is it having? I mean, is it the reason why we're not seeing young players? Because we can't risk giving a young player the chance? Is it why we can't close games out? This is all guesswork, but it does kind of make sense.
It's like we're scared as a club, and that whole atmosphere is around the club, and that means that you're right. It's kind of it's almost like a feedback loop, isn't it? They talk about climate change. Once things go past a certain level, then it all feeds back, and you have a feedback loop, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And we've kind of got that with Saints. With Southampton, our planet Earth, careering towards rising sea levels, melting permafrosts, and it is that negative attitude to the fact that we're scared about relegation means that we're not bleeding through the young players, which means we're not getting amazing talent through for free. Not kind of, again, getting big transfer fees from the fact that we're bleeding this talent through. The fact that the first team players are not on their toes because they're not worried about the young players coming through. The fact that when we go out and we take a 2-goal lead against Brighton, we're not playing with the freedom and being able to enjoy ourselves because oh my God, we have to hold on to this lead. And you're probably right. But maybe actually reducing the ticket prices, bringing a bit of atmosphere in there, bringing a bit of fun into the same, which I think the fireworks did do to a certain element, could maybe help lift the place and lift the players. And maybe the stadium wouldn't get on their backs if people were there having a nice time. They had 10 extra quid in their pocket to spend on beers in the ground and made a bit more noise as a result.
Yeah, I do agree. But fundamentally, the Saints' home record is horrific. What is it? Something like 3 home wins in this calendar year, and we are now nearly in October. It's a horrible record. What we now, we're 6 games into the season. We've not won a home game. Our home record is atrocious. So that's what matters. Ultimately, if Saints gave their fans, and I think John's looking at this now, if Saints gave their fans 6 more, if they'd given the home fans 10 home wins this season, this calendar year, things would be a lot different. But yeah,
I think it's actually worse than you thought, Tom, because we beat Bournemouth at home.
Yep.
I think that's the only game we've won at home in 2018. Like, genuinely, we beat Swansea, that was away. We beat West Brom, that was away. And before that, you have to go all the way back to November when we beat Everton 4-1.
So that's 2. So is that how many? But in 2018, how many games? No, sorry, 20. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's probably 3 games, maybe. No, 2 games, maybe. 1 game. No, Bournemouth and...
We've won 1 home game this calendar year.
That can't be right. What about Everton? Was that? Oh no, Everton was November last year because I just got engaged. Wow.
Ouch. Saints, sort it out. That's what you need to do to improve the atmosphere. Win some effing games at home.
They should pay the fans to go.
Oh, I know. Astonishing, isn't it? Right. Where do we go from here? I mean, we've talked about Saints dropping points from winning positions. We've talked about last-minute goals and always conceding them, injury time winners. Do we now head to Liverpool and talk about that game?
I don't think it'll take long, will it? I don't think it'll take long to cover that one off. It was... I was actually in the barber, because I don't know if watching this, because I've got a Turkish barber and they stream the games. It's very good. And... the sad thing was, I watched the first 20 minutes. Saints didn't actually play that bad. Like, Liverpool did that thing where they ravage you, where they just stream forward and all of a sudden each player divides into 4 other players all faster than the other one and they swarm you. But Saints actually did all right. And then, I guess you kind of feel a bit sorry for Mark Hughes as well because he sets that team up. Matt Target played really well from what I've said, but the Saints played well. Then Hoyt does his, did a sort of clumsy Hoyt thing, and then that was that, and the heads just went down. And yeah, I don't know what much else there is to say.
When you look back at the highlights of the game, all the goals really, they had elements of misfortune to them. And it's interesting about you saying that Saints played okay, because actually if you compare Saints' first half performance against Liverpool to, say, Brighton's performance against Saints probably played better against Liverpool than Brighton did against Saints in the first half. And we had chances. Vestergaard had a header chance, pretty similar to Matip's. The difference was Matip's went in, Vestergaard's didn't. Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg cannot hit a volley, unfortunately, as well as Cuco Martina. He totally scuffed his chance. And that's playing with a 4-5-1. And then the 3 goals are all fairly fast. I mean, the first one was just a bizarre... It's the kind of thing that you see on that brilliant Twitter feed, Crap 90s Football, which Saints defending against West Ham featured on in this week.
Amazing. It was like something out of, like, You've Been Framed. Like, blokes hitting each other, people falling over, like, just ridiculous goals. Really worth watching.
Yeah, that's crap 90s football. Definitely search for that on Twitter. It's well worth a chuckle. And, somewhat reassuring, actually, watching the Saints team that I loved in the 90s being so farcical. But yeah, he had that kind of like weird farcical kind of goal. I mean, we've talked about Matip's header already earlier in the show, which was just kind of bad defending. And I think most days Vestergaard would have realised the threat sooner and would have probably have dealt with it. And then obviously... The third one was a rebound off the bar from, Shaqiri's free kick. And, we didn't react quick enough to it and Salah got there first. But the game was over at half-time and Liverpool gave up at half-time. So I don't think we can really say, well done, we kept a clean sheet in the second half, which is kind of what Hughes tried to do in his post-match interview. But... I mean, if we'd beaten Brighton, we wouldn't have cared about this result at all, and perhaps we shouldn't care about it.
I think that I think you're exactly right. Like, if we go and beat Brighton 2-0, 2-1, like, it's almost like the Everton game, isn't it? The start of the season, we went away to Everton, we lost 2-1. No one panics because that's just what we do. Like, I think Liverpool are probably going to win. If they play, 18 home games this season, whatever it is, 19 home games, I'll be amazed if they don't win 15 of them. And of that 15, they're probably going to win 10 by at least 3 goals. They're animals. And they've got the best front three probably in European football. So losing 3-0 is no great shame. But I think you're right. It's the cumulative effect. And also, we're doing... This season is sort of terrifyingly reminiscent of last season, where our when we say easier games are front-loaded at the start. And now we go into a difficult run of games where, realistically, like, Saints should... Like, if you look at it on paper, Saints could have started the season, should have beaten Burnley, could have beaten Leicester, beat Palace, could have beaten Brighton. We should have 12, like, realistically, like, we could have 12 points and lost 2, and then we could go, right, got some difficult games now, we can write it out. Instead, now we go into it, by the time we hit Christmas, and I'm more positive than a lot of people, by the time we hit Christmas, we could be in some deep doggy doo-doo.
Yeah, it's interesting. The BBC ran a kind of an article comparing how teams were doing to basically the same fixtures that they'd had last season, and Saints basically doing exactly the same. So from the same fixtures that we've had basically exactly the same results. So we've not improved this season at all from last season, and last season was a terrifying experience. Are we better than last season, though, Tom?
Yeah, I do. This is the mad thing. Like, the Brighton first half of football, I know Brighton were terrible, but by God, that was enjoyable, wasn't it? As a Saints fan, like, people like smashing into people everywhere, like a real sense of purpose, a real sense of drive. Again, like, big shout out, Nathan Redmond. Like, whatever he did in the summer is an inspiration, and let's get Charlie Austin doing it this next coming summer, because like Nathan Redmond looks like a man transformed, and again he just needs a goal. Like, I hope something goes in for him because I think he will fly. So much better than last season. Like, real attacking football at points. They were really good against Palace as well, Saints. But yeah, it's mentally, isn't it? And if you look at that table now, 14th, and it's not pretty reading, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, there are still 3 teams out there that haven't even got a victory yet, so like Newcastle, Cardiff and Huddersfield. But again, I mean, is this going to be like last season where we're actually just going to be looking at other teams to be worse than us rather than us being better than other teams, which I think it's a shame because we have got all these internationals in the squad. We know that Saints can be decent, and it's just so upsetting to see this happen. We've not got a particularly great run of fixtures coming up either. I mean, I don't know if you've been studying the fixture list, but obviously we've got Wolves away next, which we'll come on to and do a little bit of slightly more in depth. We've got the EFL Cup to Everton, so I think we can forget carrying on in the EFL Cup. Then we have Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away, who up until this weekend have been looking really, really good, and then probably the next chance that we've got a reasonably good chance of getting a win in the Premier League is going to be 27th of October against Newcastle.
6-pointer, that one. I mean, that is crazy. That's looking like a 6-pointer. At the end of October, Saints are home to Newcastle. Newcastle look pretty dire, don't they, at the start of this season? It's almost like which Saints is going to turn up. But the problem is even the Saints that play well can't win. They struggle to win. So we either go somewhere and get totally turned over, like we did at Liverpool, or we go and we play really well, like we did for, I don't know, probably 55 minutes of the game against Brighton, and we still don't win. So it is alarming. It is alarming, and this weekend against Wolves is a banana skin.
Yeah, I think we're going to do some listener emails before we get on to Wolves. So, this first email. Hi, John, Tom, and friends. Hope all is well. I've been listening to the Saints FC podcast for about 9 months now and are loving your work. Yeah. The theme tune used to drive me mad, but now I know it's John's own work from his days as a top DJ. I'm starting to love it. Very, very generous. 2 things for me. First, a song for Danny Ings. Tom, how are those vocal cords doing? Yeah, so Tom's doing some kind of like vocal warm-ups. Have we got a tune for this? I don't think we have, so you're just going to have to freestyle it, Tom. No. But can you read that?
I can read that. Thanks for the lack of tune. Very helpful. Okay, let me just get this. This is a bit weird. It's like a carol. Who's that man born in Eastleigh? Who's that man we all adore? Danny Ings is his name, and he scores a goal a game. Now we don't need a striker anymore. Repeat. Whoa, that man born in Eastleigh. Yeah, I mean, that could work. It's quite complicated for a football chant, isn't it?
Yeah. I was wondering, do you think this is a bit of a throwback to the Far Show when he used to do, and his mate that used to try and do that? So, who's that girl? Who's that man born in Eastleigh? I don't know. Yeah. And then, so, I mean, we've got another point here from Chris from Bristol in his email. So, secondly, Saints' right side. If we look at our left side, I'm pretty confident Bertie is solid and looks motivated, and Redmond is on his journey of rediscovery. My issue lies on our right side. Cedric. Cedric. If you look at the total number, we can see, thanks to his poor defending, usually at the back post defending headers, it has to hugely over-index against nearly any other right-back in the league. He hasn't corroborated this with any facts, so this is speculation at this point. But, we're probably with you on that. I take your point that centre-backs have to take some of the blame, but the man failing to do his job in the one-on-one he is the man failing to do his job in the one-on-one defending. His get-out-of-jail card is, but he's great going forward. But is this true? I'm sure he's only slightly better than average, than great. His weaknesses in defence outweighs his strengths going forward, in my opinion, and for that reason, we need to look at options. Tom, what do you think?
I think it's unfair on Cedric. I think the goals that we concede where Cedric is left against a big centre-back, I don't think that's Cedric's fault. Like, that's ultimately the fault of the centre-backs, and and the fault of the goalkeeper. Like, who, it's not. Like, Cedric, if you're Cedric and you've got Glenn Murray, who's 6'3" or something, jumping on you, like, you're not doing that because your job is to mark Glenn Murray and you've been tactically outfought by Glenn Murray. Your job, it shouldn't even get to him. Fundamentally, like, the ball shouldn't even be going near it. It's because our centre-backs are scared of, they're vampires and they're scared of crosses.
Yeah. Also, I think Cedric has kind of actually had a fairly decent couple of games. I mean, his tackle against Salah in the Liverpool game, the last-ditch tackle, was really good. And we talked about it earlier, that it was kind of his work that led to the Danny Ings winning the penalty against Brighton. However, despite Cedric's better moments in the last couple of games, and probably not being totally at fault for being left at the back post marking the big man, I'm kind of with Chris on this, because I do think Cedric I've never been wholly convinced by Cedric. I don't know whether we've been spoilt with right backs, but who was it? Nathaniel Clyne was the right back before Cedric. I mean, he's not even getting a look in at Liverpool now. I would much rather have Nathaniel Clyne in our team now.
I think there's another argument, which is that if we're going to play 4-4-2, which we do that appears to be what we're going to do now, which is great. I think it's the best format for us. There is an argument that do we need if we don't need to carry a small, defensively vulnerable right back, but we've already got pretty defensively vulnerable centre backs, which is a terrifying thing to be able to say. Do we need to carry that? Particularly when you've got El Yunusi and Redmond who can switch wings and who will give you such drive forward. Would we not be better off at playing Yoshida maybe at right back? Who is more defensively minded, and he's not going to burst down the wing, but he also is. He is a better defender first and foremost. That's what he does. And I wonder, in the days when we, the brief glory period at the start of the season when we played 5-3-2, yeah, Cedric totally makes sense. But for me now, I think there has to be an argument of like, we need to shore up at the back. And Cedric is, has many things, but he's not doing that for us.
Yeah, I mean, Yoshida can play there. Bednarek can play there. Stevens could probably play there. We've seen McQueen play there. Obviously, he's out on loan at the moment. There do seem to be options. And actually, Chris has got a couple of suggestions himself. He was saying he was convinced that Hughes was going to sign Jeff Cameron or some other big lump, and part of me thought this is a good idea to put Cedric under some pressure and have an option in this style for the right-back position, which I kind of agree with you there, Chris, as well. And he also says we have Jan Valery, and do we know when he'll be ready for the first team? I've heard great things, and on Football Manager, he is a beast. I mean, it's been a long time since I've played Football Manager, but I do have my favourites. And also, most importantly, can you imagine us singing Zooton's Valerie for 90 minutes? That is something I would like to see.
I'd get that. I mean, if the girl from the Zootons wants to come along and play sax, I'd also be very happy with that, whatever she's doing right now. Yeah, but on a serious point, though, we spoke loads about Fraser Forster and the lack of serious competition and what maybe that does to footballers, very costed, very privileged individuals that footballers are. Maybe the fact that Cedric has no competition for his position is not good for Saints. But having said that, again, I'm not convinced Cedric is the problem here. I think that the ball shouldn't even be getting to near Cedric, and that, I think, is the problem.
Yeah, I agree. Although mainly when you're making that point, I was also thinking that we might end up with an Amy Winehouse version of Valerie. So I think, yeah. But either way, I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to get him in the squad and certainly have that song option. Also, moving on to right midfield, and another one of our favourites, James Ward-Prowse. In my opinion, the best what James Ward-Prowse ever played was under Ronald on the right wing, pinging the balls to Pele. Now we all know he's not a traditional winger, but he does offer us something different to Redmond, and has arguably the best delivery in the league. Surely Austin Ings would benefit from such quality, not just on the set plays.
I think David Silva probably want to have a word with you about the idea that Ward-Prowse is the best deliverer in the league. I feel sorry. That was the game against Brighton was the 77th game for Southampton that James Ward-Prowse has come on as a substitute. James Ward-Prowse is 24 years old. He's not old, but also he's not young. And I love. James. There's parts of James Ward-Prowse's game that we love. We love those incredible free kicks. He doesn't actually score many attacking free kicks, but there's no doubt, his crossing is brilliant. But I think there's an argument that Saints' style of football is not, is not really set up for Ward-Prowse. He doesn't really get time on the ball to hurt players. He's not the goal scorer that we want him to be. He can't play between, there was an idea at one point he would play between sort of midfield and the forwards. Doesn't seem to quite be able to do that either. And it's clear, obviously, that we want to play with pace down the wings, and he's not blessed with pace. I feel a bit sorry for the guys, because obviously people rate him, but they don't rate him enough, they don't trust him enough. And there's an argument that, and this is probably what you say for all of Saints players, they're just too nice. Ward-Prowse is probably too nice.
Well, I mean, Claude Puel kind of famously said that James Ward-Prowse is the kind of dream boy that your daughter would bring back, and that is it. He's the nice guy. You can kind of you trust him with your daughter, but you don't trust him with the right side of midfield for Saints.
He's the guy, and he's you, and Lamina is the guy, or Pogba's the guy that you should be worried about. Is that what they say? You vernacular?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, Chris, thank you very much for that email. If you want to follow Chris from Bristol, he's on Twitter at Beeve, BEAVE _DOG, Beef Dog. Chris, I wonder if you get that same train that my brother takes down to St Mary's on Saturdays, the little 2-carriage train that you're all packed into like a Japanese train, except it doesn't go at bullet speed, it goes about 5 miles an hour. But enough respect to the West Country Saints following, because I used to be one of you before I moved to London. I got another email as well. This one's a little bit shorter. This one, I think, comes with some heaping the praise on us. So, Neil Keeping, listened on my entire commute from Southampton to Portsmouth. Didn't get bored. Sign of a good podcast. Tom, how do we deal with that?
It's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week, so I'll take it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. I think we had another email from our friend who runs the antique shop, old Nick, and he's kind of like, his kind of compliments come, disguised as insults. But Neil, that, great. I mean, I'm pleased that your entire commute from Southampton to Portsmouth is that we're keeping you entertained on that. I'm sorry that you have to work in Portsmouth, but probably someone has to. Hopefully Saints can win a few more games to make working in Portsmouth amongst that lot a little bit more enjoyable. So he also says, covered all players and all elements of each game nicely. I was at the Leicester game and was impressed by how they played. I even thought Hojbjerg played well until the sending off. Redmond is a new player, seems to have worked hard on his game and strength in America. Nathan Redmond, he's the main positive talking point about this season, is it? Well, Redmond and Hojbjerg probably.
Yeah, I think we all knew that Hojbjerg would come. Well, Hojbjerg was good, wasn't he? Towards the end of last season, he was driving Saints on, whereas Redmond almost the opposite. He'd lost the faith, of the fans. I think, apart from the goal at Everton, I think people lost their way with him. But yeah, again, like Redmond is, fair play to him. He's had a very difficult backstory. I think he had a sister that passed away when she was 12 or something like that. He's not had an easy upbringing, but he's done brilliantly this season. And I do think he looks like a player that we've got a couple of players that can really hurt people. I think Danny Ings is definitely someone with his movement and Redmond. So yeah, Redmond deserves to be in that team week in, week out. And I think Mark Hughes obviously has a lot of faith in him. And I think, again, Redmond just needs something to go in. And when it goes in, you watch, he'll hit 4 or 5 on the bounce.
Yeah, I don't even know if he desperately needs a goal, because I think he's already doing it for Saints even without the scoring. He's creating dangerous situations time and time again. I was really, really impressed with him against Brighton, and a lot of other fans were, basically saying that they, that wasn't even his best game. Obviously, going away on this summer camp seems to have done absolute wonders. I mean, I noted earlier you said that he needs to send Charlie Austin the same summer camp. I don't think you're ever going to persuade Charlie Austin to go and spend the summer working on his fitness. But fair play to everyone, it's really worked. Yeah. And actually, maybe this is something we should be looking at our players that are not on international duty and actually putting a bit more pressure on them to say, look, you're earning tens of thousands of pounds. Your career is probably only 10 to 15 years long. Okay, James Ward-Prowse is probably going to have a 20-year career because he started so young. But, really make the most of it. We need to get someone, I don't know whether it's a different manager or if it's someone in the kind of management squad, to really G up the players and say, look, you're this close to being an international, regular international. Someone like Redmond, if he carries on the way he's playing, will be in the England squad by the end of the season.
Yeah, I 100% with you on this. I think we'll see 3 Saints players play for England this season. You'll see Bertrand get back in that squad. I think you'll see Redmond, and I hope you'll see Danny Ings get back in the England squad. But I think as well, if you're playing for Saints, and this was something that was said at the fans meeting, with Les Reed and Kruger, and if you're playing for Saints, you should be an international footballer. That's the calibre of player they're looking to sign. As a young player, they want players that will play international football. If you're not playing international football and you're playing for Saints, you're not doing it right. Sorry if it might be a little bit over the top, but it's true. They have everything they need, including the scrutiny, to play at a top level. And almost, I think you're exactly right about Nathan Redmond. It's almost like, if you're not away with the international team, then you better as hell make sure that next time that thing happens, you are away with the international team. And that seems to be what Redmond is set on doing.
Yeah, I mean, really, really impressed with him. I think we need to speak about the Wolves game that's coming up this weekend, because otherwise this is going to be an epically long podcast. We've got Saints versus Wolves. I have a connection with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yeah. So, I mean, I've mentioned my connection with Southampton previously on the podcast before, the fact that my great-granddad played for Southampton. He also played for Wolverhampton Wanderers and was manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers. Do you know what his win percentage was as manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers? Do you want to have a guess, Tom?
32%.
Higher.
51%.
Not quite that high.
46.
43%. That's still pretty good, though. I mean, he was a decent. He obviously had a decent footballing game.
We would take that now. Bring him back.
unfortunately died many years ago. But yeah, so I have a little bit of a soft spot for Wolves. Obviously, Saints are my team when I was growing up. I grew up in Bath. Southampton was a bit closer, but most supporting Southampton had Matthew Le Tissier. And we're going to be playing against Wolves. I've got a lot of time for Wolves, and I think, really, out of all the teams that got promoted from the Championship last season, Wolves really are the ones which look like they could establish themselves in the Premier League pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's been big. It got real quality. It's interesting. You look at the step up that you look at the sort of step up that some of the promoted teams have. They really struggle. Obviously, that's not something Wolves are doing in terms of quality. I really, really, really rate them. I fear for Saints this weekend, which is not something I like to say.
So, I mean, what is it about Wolves that you think kind of are going to cause Saints trouble? I mean, is it Ruben Neves? Is he the biggest fear factor? Is it just the fact that they're a team with momentum? They're playing well. They played well in the Championship. They've kept that momentum in the Premier League. The players that they've signed in the Championship were better than your typical Championship players. They've got players that have played in the Champions League before. It is a little bit nerve-wracking, isn't it?
It is, and I think as well they've got a great mix of quality players. Exactly what I say, players that play at the highest level, huge amounts of experience in European football. They've got a manager who is very savvy, and also they've not really got a huge amounts to lose. They are the new boys in the league. They're just coming out and playing the football they want to play, and I think they've not had. Yeah, they've had good results. Not had any super incredible, amazing results yet. But if you look at how normally new teams struggle to settle in that league, Wolves have definitely not done that. So it's going to be. I think it's going to be a tough 90 minutes for the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, Ruben Neves is probably the player that I fear the most. Interesting, I just had a little chat with the guys that run the Wolves podcast. I think it's called like Wolves 77. And I did ask them, what is perhaps the area where we might be able to kind of like actually damage them. And apparently the centre of their defence is a little bit slow. And I think potentially this could be an opportunity for Shane Long. So if we've got a slow defence with Wolves, perhaps Shane Long can cause a little bit of trouble. And the guys from their podcast also said that if they're winning in the 70th minute, they don't really have the strength and depth to bring on players to shore things up. So on the Wolves podcast, they were interested in Romeu. That's a player that they actually feared, which was quite interesting to hear. And I said they probably wouldn't be seeing him until about the 70th minute if we're in the lead. And but they said that they don't really have the strength and depth to do that. Having said that, though, they made 9 changes for their League Cup game. So they are going to be playing basically their Premier League side, and it will be roughly the same side. But there could be some hope, some glimmer of hope if we can get some fast runs into the box.
Yeah, and again, I think it's something we've spoken about before is maybe Saints are better away from home. Away from the negative mindset of St Mary's, away from which I think the players have. Maybe away fans are less quick to get on the team's back. That's not a criticism of home fans. It's just generally, in my experience, that seems to be that way. Yeah, you never know. And I think if they've got a slow centre back and we've got Danny Ings and we've got Nathan Redmond and we've got Shane Long, then we can punish them. And it is the kind of game you can kind of see Saints, sort of quietly optimistic about it.
You're feeling quietly optimistic? Yeah. Can we have a prediction from you, Tom?
2-1 Saints, Danny Ings, Shane Long.
You know what the prediction I gave the Wolves podcast guys? No. 2-1 Wolves with Saints taking the lead 1-0 and then throwing it all away. I need Saints to show me a bit of love and a bit of resilience, Tom. I've lost my belief. I've become weak in my love for Saints. I mean, I don't know what's happened. What are your best memories of Saints versus Wolves? It's been a little while since we've last played them.
There's one, isn't there, that stands out, and it is and also this is not really a professional thing to do, John. Fantastic interview with Klaus Lundevall. And Klaus, if you're listening, it was an inspirational listen. Brilliant. And if anyone hasn't listened to the session with Klaus, please do. He comes across brilliantly. But it has to be Klaus's goal, doesn't it? The first goal for Saints. Yeah,
I mean, Klaus scoring at Moligny. I mean, who was there? Write in, tell us about it. saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com. What did it feel like? Probably a game that I remember, which I actually went to, was I think it was the quarter-final of the FA Cup when we got to the final was against Wolves, and we had them home. Yeah, when we got to the final against Arsenal. I'm pretty sure we had them at home in the quarter-finals, and I remember meeting a few of the Wolves fans on the train down to Southampton, and it's a pretty good performance. It's a pretty convincing performance, and obviously because it's part of that great run, I remember that pretty fondly. I do think we've got one other thing to talk about on the podcast, haven't we, Tom, before we go? And it's about a friend of yours and his boy called Teddy.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone is free this Friday coming, that's Friday the 28th of September, in Union Street in SE1, Marlborough Sports, so sort of down sort of London Bridge, Borough sort of way. Good friend of mine, Jamie, his little boy Teddy, has cancer, and there is a day sort of from 12 till 7. It's going to be a sports day with sort of football, volleyball and netball. All the proceeds are going to pay for Teddy's treatment. We're hoping to get Teddy off to the US for some really innovative, some treatment. It's a £10 donation on the day. It should be a really fun day. I'll be going down there. Anyone who is in and around the London Bridge, Borough area, if you're a Saints fan, come down, spend £10, and maybe make a difference to what is a very, very, very worthy cause.
And if people are not going to be in South London on Friday, is there like a Just Giving page where they can go to and give a donation or anything like that, Tom?
If you go to there's a fiveaside.org, which is 5. The number 5 and then side.org/Teddy's -big -match. You'll see details on there, but it's a really, really worthy cause for a great family. If you can spare the time, just come down and make a difference.
Absolutely, get on that, Saints fans. I know that you're all a really good bunch. Quite a lot of you. We'll put it out on Twitter as well, so that you can follow the links on that. I know quite a few of you sponsored me when I did some fundraising in the summertime. So I know that there's some good, lovely people out there, and if you're looking for a cause to get behind, that is an absolutely fantastic one to do so. Anyway, I think we're kind of coming to the end of the podcast now, Tom. As always, if you want to get in contact with the Saints FC podcast, and we do absolutely love hearing from you. We'll probably read out your email on the show or discuss the points you bring up. So do send us an email at saintsfcpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at saintsfcpodcast or at saintsfcpod. I can't remember now. At saintsfcpodcast. Said it so many times I've kind of lost track of where I am. Fingers crossed for a positive result at the weekend. Let's get this season back on track. Anyway, it's bye-bye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
Cheerio.